What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Brutally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Elle Stanger. She has a really great podcast called They Talk Sex Podcast, where she dives into all kinds of things, honestly, that I find fascinating, whether it be people in the sex work industry, different people who are advocates for changing laws, just all kinds of things. Basically, as a certified sex instructor, she is a very knowledgeable person and making something that is, and for most people, is very difficult to discuss and makes you feel shy or awkward or whatever. And I've always found that Elle especially just has a very calming voice, comes to everything with just such a matter of fact attitude that it just kind of breaks down a lot of the stigmatization of a lot of the things that she discusses and makes it just really informative. And like I said, for me, at least, like a really nice break from the monotony of a lot of the same things that I tend to listen to between comedy and music-based things. And like I said, I think if you're an inquisitive person, and especially in the world of sex and sex education and sex work and all that kind of stuff, in this day and age, there's so much misinformation being put out there that I think Elle and a lot of her guests and so forth just do a great job being a resource to kind of be more informed. Beyond that, she has been someone that I've followed through just having people living out in Portland and a handful of other people kind of being in the adult scene and so forth. A lot of those like people you may know or people that follow other people. You just kind of pay attention, you see a name, and then finally you're just like, all right, like I guess I'll start following you. But it is a thing that I've long admired her. I've really wanted to have her on the show to kind of discuss the role that music plays working at a strip club, the role that it plays in a lot of other facets, learning how to read people as a result of working in kind of a very people-centric business. There's just a lot of interesting things that I've always kind of wanted to discuss with her. And one of those, honestly, I feel like I need to give a little bit of a trigger warning. At about the 48-minute mark of the conversation, so Elle and I discuss her partner's suicide. I know that may be triggering to some people. I just want you to be prepared. You can skip through all that, but essentially the gist of why we kind of get into it is she is one of the few people I know that has gone through loss of someone that's lived with you, literally in your house. As you'll hear me kind of go into further detail, the house I live in with my wife, I've moved into with two of my best friends, and there's been another person that lived here for a little while that was a good friend of mine, and all three of them have passed away. And so I have reminders all over this house of all of them. And that's not a normal thing that I feel like a lot of people roughly my age have gone through. And Elle is one of the few people that can kind of speak to loss and staying in a home and how you navigate it in grief and all of this kind of stuff. So just want to give a heads up. Again, that's going to be about 48 minutes into the conversation. You'll hear me kind of set it up a little bit. All that said, I really want to thank Elle for coming on the show. If you would like to keep up with her, you can find her at Elle Stanger on Facebook, Instagram at stripperwriter, Twitter at Elle Stanger. You can go to her website at stripperwriter.com. That is kind of the landing page for everything that she gets into. If you'd like to keep up with the podcast specifically, you can go to theytalksex.com. Otherwise, Instagram at theytalksexpodcasts. New episodes are out, so plenty to listen to that are the newer episodes. You can go back to other seasons and check out different stuff. Always something you can learn about. I really enjoyed the podcast, so I hope if you enjoyed this conversation, go check out her show. I think it's really great, and support them. And speaking of support, please go support Rockabilia, rockabilia.com. Use our code BREWtally at checkout. Take 10% off your total purchase order. Support all of them for supporting the show for so many years. At this point, Christmas is, literally days away at this point. So you might still have some time to get something from them. Use our code, save some money. Why not? Holidays. If not, get some new gear for the new year. I don't know, that sounds cool. Use our code. Like I said, BREWtally, checkout. Just use it. If you like keep up with the podcast, you can follow us. Simple enough. BrewSpeakPod on all your social media platforms of choice. Email me at brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. Rate, review, subscribe. You know why that is important. Please do such however you are able to do so. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Elle, and I'll talk to you all on the next one. And like I was going. How many episodes have you lost over the years of doing your show at this point?
Lost probably like 3, but one that I just didn't record. That was my fault. 1, and it was pretty recently.
Still funny that in all these years later that you still can make these mistakes.
Yep, as simple as that. Anytime. Yep.
So I first of all want to thank you for coming on the show. Like I was kind of saying before we were rolling, I have been listening to the few iterations of your show over the years for a while, and always love kind of how you're able to sort of connect with a wide array of people while still being informative and also kind of being very vulnerable about a lot of life things. And I think your show, in addition to a few others a handful of years ago, was sort of the permissive. That's not a word. The permission I needed kind of for myself to kind of do something similar with real life experiences I was going through. So kind of a pleasure to actually have you be a part of this show.
Thank you for having me. And Brutally Speaking is a good title for a show where you're being vulnerable and honest.
I thought it was a clever pun. One of my friends, when I still had a co-host back in the day, was like, we should call it Clickbaity because my last name is Beatty. And I was like, no one will ever be on that show. No one would ever do it.
That's funny. Thank you for having me.
So I figured I'd kind of jump into something we were discussing in the emails and setting this up, which I guess I hate trying to introduce someone because I think they'll always do infinitely a better way of doing it than me. So introduce yourself to my listeners who may not be aware of who you are.
Yeah. So thank you for having me on, John. I am at this point, so I have been a published nude model for 20 years this year. I work primarily as a stripper in Portland, Oregon, but also online. I've worked as a writer, and that's columnist, erotica, op-eds, product reviews, let's see, fundraiser stuff, like all kinds of things. I co-run a 501c3 by and for people currently or formerly in the adult industries who may or may have not experienced trafficking or interpersonal violence. Let's be honest, a lot of us, no matter what you do, experience interpersonal violence. So I am a certified sexuality educator for the last 7 or 8 years. I went through about 4 years of specialized training through a couple different organizations to do that. So I spend a lot of time talking to adults about their sexuality. What I'm certified to do is give information and resources, but when I'm acting unofficially, I can give my opinion or we can just tell stories. So I do a few things. I do a lot of different kinds of sex work right now. That's really important to note. I am most vocal about my strip club work, probably because it's consistent and legal, so I can talk about it, but I've done a lot of weird things for money.
Well, I think it was kind of interesting for those that have known that I've had Joanna Angel on, and I went back and listened to your episode with her from a few years ago. And it was interesting. Funny. She's so funny, and she, like I think a lot of us, and you both kind of hit on this in your conversation where you're like, I think the days of anyone being a singular thing, like I just do this one thing as a source of income or even for entertainment or enjoyment are kind of long gone. We're multifaceted beings. So I know you kind of give that spiel on your podcast, They Talk Sex. And it was a thing where it's like, it's so many things that I don't want to misquote what you do or anything like that. But we're going to get into a lot of different things. The first one kind of being, working in the strip club and how important music is and the role that it plays in a lot of your day-to-day life versus, I think, a lot of us. And something that I was kind of thinking is, music is one of those magical things where it can transport you back to something very personal that happened to you. I know through doing this show for as long as I have and having to kind of interview more musicians for like a press junket initially,
that I hated music for a while. I hated listening to it. It became a chore. It became a job. And I just fell out of love with it. I wonder, given the fact of some of the things you do, like through like an OnlyFans thing or some of your Instagram where you're adding music to videos and so forth, and then even in your profession, have you found that? Do you compartmentalize your music for like, this is work, this is for me, this is whatever? Or have you ever fallen out of love of music?
I recognize when my brain is overstimulated. And it's funny, the clearest way that I will know that is usually after the end of a long day, because my days start at either 6 a.m. or 9:30 a.m., whether or not that's if I'm doing parenting or sex work or administrative work or something else. But they go until 10 p.m. at the earliest or 2:33 a.m. at the latest. So I have long stretches. And if I've had a very long stretch of a day and I'm driving home from the strip club shift and I get in the car and I realize like the radio or my music coming on is just too much, I'm like, oh, we've finally reached that point. But it does take a lot. It takes a lot. Yeah, because I use music to clean. I have it on around the house, like pretty ambient noise. My parents always did that. I noticed it was usually like the classical or the jazz station on if it wasn't like the classic rock. But I don't want to transport myself back to childhood too much. So I keep it off of the dad rock station unless I'm tapping into that for that clientele at the club, which is a different story we could probably talk about. So I use a lot of ambient music, but I also tend to, and this is probably an autism hyperlexia thing, I pick up on lyrics and words quite a bit. So I will wake up with just like a phrase or chorus in my head all the time. I usually, if I'm watching a show and the music comes on, a show or music or whatever, like I try to identify it. The lyrics sometimes are too on the nose, or I'm like, oh, this is cringe. Who picked this? Stuff like that. So I really can't get away from music. It's pretty rare. If I want silence, then I've had enough music, but it takes a while to get to that point.
I just always think it's interesting how different people navigate music in their day-to-day lives. Like, I know I have some friends who are like, I'm not really musical. I don't listen to music. And that just is weird to me. Like my wife and I she was finishing Wednesday, and I noticed at the end of every episode, there's a reinterpreted version of some song, usually like a piano melody. And I'll just start going, oh, that's this song. And like, there's no lyrics, but you're just like, oh, it's this song.
I can't help it. Yeah, exactly.
Can't help it. So to know that there are people who don't have that condition is very weird to me. It's like, how are you not aware of what's around you and your surroundings and how it plays into so many different things that maybe you do or your moods? And it seems like that is something you are very in tune with. So I just always wondered if you get tired of it and you're like, I fucking hate music right now.
Not, there's definitely some songs that come on that I'm like, oh, I will change this every single time. But that's, I think a lot of people feel that way. I have such a fun time seeing how music impacts other people. And maybe this is like a little bit of power play that I'll admit to. But if I'm out in a place that has a jukebox, like a bar, so we're playing pool or whatever, and I'm not a recreational drinker at this point in my life. I would drink at work to make money in the bar and then socially when I was younger. But I have a good time looking around at who else is in the building and queuing up like 5 to 8 songs. And let's just see if I can get these people to move, right? Let's see if I can get them to do what I want. So, are they singing along? Like, I know, for example, if I put on the Rolling Stones' Gimme Shelter to anyone who was born between 1955 and 1975, they're gonna like move and sing along to it. Like, boomer dads love that song. Same thing with Pink Floyd, Young Lust. It's such a short, slutty, like intense. There's so many things that people, especially if they recognize it, that's a whole other, bring them to a place kind of thing. But I have a really good time also if I'm at work, standing in the back of the DJ booth or wherever, and we look at the crowd together and I say, you know what, I think everybody in this building right now is going to appreciate Creep by TLC for my first song. And then I go up there and it starts and the girl at the stage is like, oh my God, I haven't heard this in forever. I love this song. You know, or like, and she's my age because she's having nostalgia now. She's like, oh my God, I haven't heard this, you know, whatever. And then meanwhile, there's someone who's 20 years younger than her, like 25, and the 90s are in right now. So they're like, ooh, I'm feeling a vibe. So you can use music for different purposes to try to capture as many people as possible. I dated a woman DJ really briefly a long time ago, and she was a performer, not a stripper, but she said, you know, she would play with the tempo and the intensity of the bass and other things, whether she wanted people to calm down or become more energetic. And I remember that.
Yeah. It's funny because working in a bar one night a week myself as a door guy, I will do that sometimes where it's like, sometimes like the song, like it's just random shit. And like the guys that like the old men that played like Creed or whatever have left, but I got younger kids in. So it'll be like, I don't know, it's too early for Chapel Roan because I know I'm going to hear that ad nauseum in like the next 3 hours. But like, let's kind of ease into the night. What's the crowd like? Let's play something that you probably aren't gonna, you're not gonna notice it when it kicks on. I want to be a little subtle, so I'll do the thing where it's like it's probably a song you haven't heard, but by the chorus, your ears are gonna kind of start perking up, and you're like, oh yeah, and then you're gonna kind of just slowly, like a little bit of conversation starts happening, a little singing maybe or whatever, but like the mood has kind of shifted, and we're kind of getting into the beginning of my evening, and then. Usually I will try to transition it into something either very hard, like where it's going to be a very obvious disconnect, or it's like, I'm going to play like something meant like metallic, hardcore punk, something, because I can see that the next set of stuff coming up, there's no real transitionary thing that I can do to it. So it's almost like, let's just have a real hard, soft, like a palate cleanse right here. And then we can transition into something else. But it is interesting when you pay attention to a room from a vantage point and can control it with something as simple as a song and just see how it impacts everyone.
Definitely. One of the ones I also want to mention, so looking at history and trends with clothing, political sexual attitudes, body types being hip or not, because women's bodies in the last century, it's like every 10 years it goes from wafy to curvy is what's like, you know, in or whatever. And God bless whoever, what body you have in that moment, you know? So with music also, like disco was really cool for some people until it was way less cool for a lot of people. And now partly I think because of fascism, conservatism, and then the opposition to that, you do have a resurgence of pop music that's incorporating like disco and, you know, like queerness or tech, like electronic music. So what I fucked with a little bit was the Bee Gees' Stayin' Alive. So the lyrics are so intensely political, and you can apply all of them line per line to what is going on now. Like have a gander, go look them up. But what I noticed is if you stick that in around Chapel Roan and some of the boppier, like Sabrina Carpenter stuff that kids are listening to, it works really nicely. Everybody knows it. It's upbeat, and it's also gone through a few generations to where it's not like, ew, that's dorky anymore. It's just like extreme nostalgia, or it's new to people that are so young they've like heard it in they've heard it in Boogie Nights or something somewhere, you know. Right. But I got, you know, there's been a couple times I've asked the DJ like 1 a.m. in a busy club, and I'm like, play Stayin' Alive and then play like Tony Braxton or No Diggity right after it. And like people are fucking loving it. And I can see my boss, I can see my coworkers, I can see some random dude off the street, and they're like walking around mouthing Stayin' Alive. And I'm like, this is magic. We did it.
It's kind of funny, like how, and this is why, like, it's so funny to me that predominantly I'm more seen as a metal hardcore guy. And I do love those genres, but I grew up in an era in the 90s and so forth, in the late 80s, like where it's like all music was pop music back then. And I was randomly listening to Otis. It's funny you were talking about like how sometimes lyrics can be the same all these years later. I was listening to Otis Redding's The Dock of the Bay lyrics, and there's a line, I think it's the second verse, I have it pulled up, but it's the lyric is, look like nothing's going to change, everything still remains the same, I can't do what 10 people tell me to do, so I guess I'll remain the same. And like as I was looking at that, I was just like, shit, like I kind of really fucking feel that right now, where it's like everything constantly feels like the more it changes, it just stays the same. And then we just go back to the same things and we just do the same things. And you could either look at that kind of in an apathetic way where you're like, man, I haven't done fucking shit with my life. I should. Or in some instances, maybe like where I'm at now, where it's like, yeah, I think some shit needs to change. And I'm actually going to do something instead of just being complacent in my own life.
It helps having context historically, like really, truly. Yeah. With stuff when you're like, oh, some of these struggles are individual, but also so common that they're like they're cultural consciousness. We go through a lot of phases. Yes, that. And also something you said about when growing up, all the stuff around us was pretty much like pop music, or it felt like pop music.
Yeah.
So if a stripper played Cherry Waves by the Deftones, would you appreciate that?
Yeah, but I was a young high schooler when it came out. I just went and saw Deftones because a friend of mine's on the tour. And it was weird that a record that everyone hated when it came out is what has brought them resurgence of a record that I'm glad they're playing shit off of. But like sitting there watching them play it, I was like, it is fucking insane to be in an arena hearing songs that when this came out when I was, a young 20-something, people were like, this album fucking sucks. And you're like, what?
But it's actually really good.
No, I always loved that album and I loved that song. And I always championed that record. So it's just weird 20 years later to be like, where the fuck were all of you? Apparently you had to have kids that then like this. It reminds me of that scene in Back to the Future.
Yeah, no, so that's one of the things I'm also playing with, where I remember Deftones, like the White Pony album, whatever, was like one of the biggest top selling albums of its time. So I also know that if I put that song on to anyone who is like between, at this point, 30 and 50, and they're a dude with tattoos, they're probably gonna know it, especially if they're a white guy, like, to be so for real. So that's why I mentioned that, because I profiled you. And I was right.
Poster right there.
Yeah. Oh, which one?
Right here.
Oh, I see it. The red and blue. That I didn't recognize.
Both.
I can read it now. But okay, so I give myself double credit.
But no, it's funny because and this kind of goes back to a thing that was funny when I had Joanna on when she had her book out. The choose your own novel of like a woman entering into the strip club industry or career, however I guess she wants to put it. But I was like, the thing that made me laugh, and it's as I've been going back to strip clubs all over with my wife, is it's so funny that the strip club DJ aesthetic, like the look, the voice, none of it has fucking changed since I worked in a strip club as an 18-year-old. It's still the guys, grab your ones and get ready for, like, it's still the same fucking voice and aesthetic. And I remember just joking with her. She's like, did I get it? I go, you, even in words, you fucking nailed it. And I instantly could just be like, yeah, I can see everyone I ever worked with at the club I worked with. They look exactly the same and they sound exactly the same. And they still mostly do. I'm trying to remember when I was at Lucky Devil and a few other places, Casa Diablo, I think, out your way. I don't really remember paying much attention to the DJs. I was more fascinated at one of them that everyone was wearing knee pads. And I thought that was really interesting until they were actually all doing stuff that required it. And I go, oh,
that makes sense.
It makes sense because I'm not used to seeing that typically.
Yeah, that can throw you. Was the knee pads mostly at Lucky Devil?
Yep.
I
think it's because everyone was doing all the stuff with the bar up the top.
Interesting. There's a lot of newer, younger dancers there, which there always is everywhere. And I worked there for 11 years. But and usually knowing the environment, it is a competitive pole and stage dancing environment. So a lot of dancers, myself included, would beat our bodies up. And my knees got so wrecked working there. I used to tie like bandanas over them, or I had high socks so you couldn't see my knee pads. But that makes sense.
Yeah. Weird thing I clocked, in addition to the fact that you guys all have to have food out there for your liquor licenses and such.
Yeah. In order to serve alcohol, you have to have some semblance of food, for better or worse. They do have good food at Lucky Devil. Shout out to Brandon and Taylor in the kitchen.
Yeah, I remember we took our vegetarian friends.
To Casa.
Casa, yep. And they were like, we got to come back here for the food. And I go, it's such an interesting thing. And again, I think it's been interesting as I travel more and just kind of taking in different culture locally and so forth. It was actually the Portland strip club area and industry when I went with all of my friends, because I worked in it. And so it's like, it's sort of like the Wizard of Oz thing, where it's like, I've already seen behind the curtain. I know how the magic trick's done. Like, it just is a hustle to me. All I see is the hustle. And it takes me back to how I learned how to hustle in different ways as the door guy and the bartender. And it's just a thing where you can't turn it off. And it was the first time in a very long time seeing, and I think it was at Lucky Devil, where I just go, because I had just kind of refallen in love with professional wrestling because I got my wife into it and some other friends. And I go, oh, this is sort of akin where when you understand, and I don't mean it to sound so derogatory, but it's like when you know that what it is at its face value and it's for entertainment, it's a fucking blast. When you think it's real and you get real involved with it, it's real sad and pathetic real quickly.
You're going to get really, stressed out if you think the wrestlers really have like this blood feud or whatever.
100%.
And, yeah, exactly. Or like, I mean, the stripper might really like you. Like I've fallen in love and married at least 2 of my clients, but overwhelmingly, like we're going to have an encapsulated transactional interaction that hopefully we both walk away from feeling good about. We don't need to see each other again. Exactly.
Sure. No, it's also one of the other things, in addition to working in the bar industry, of where I'm really hyper fixated on the idea of transactional relationships and understanding that from the jump.
Yes.
Something I would like to pick your brain about, just given the fact of how long you have consistently worked in the industry versus me just dabbling in it as one of my, probably speaks to a lot of how I grew up now, where it's like that was one of my first jobs as a kid out of high school, was working in a strip club.
Ooh.
But something I've always found interesting is when I worked in it, and we're talking like 2002 into like 2003, is that like social media and the internet wasn't really what it is now. But I remember back then, and maybe it's because I work for more of a company in Deja Vu, where they do things maybe a different way versus a more independently owned company. But it was always interesting to see how things have changed, where it's like you used to never tell anyone's schedule. The girls never told, the schedules. And it was to entice the people to spend their money to get in the door to find out that someone wasn't there, because it's a fucking business. It's interesting now that over the years that it's almost turned into like a lot of things where it becomes more about a brand and all of this other stuff, where it's like, come see me, I'm here on these days. Like, I know you advertise what days and times you'll be at a club and stuff like that. When did that shift start happening, and how much of it was tied to social media?
God. So that was already happening when I started stripping. I had my first audition June 2009.
That's right.
And so, and I remember, I think I made my Facebook in like 2005, so that's pretty much all I know. But I love to hear from the elders who are like, you didn't have to worry about this shit. You didn't have to take pictures of yourself for promotion. You were safer because you weren't sharing where you worked. Like, you worked where you worked, and whoever came in would engage with you, because again, if people wanted to talk to women or people or see boobies, then they had to leave their house for the most part, because it's before Snapchat or, name like Omegle or whatever, anything you could just turn on and see a living person now, naked or not, for free even. So it used to be more of a screening process. The people that came into the clubs were purposeful and probably had money to spend because they were more purposeful. Yeah, I mean, not that people don't just wander around, trying to get away with shit. But now, and since I've started, the main complaint I'd heard from people older than me and just in general was like, people act like it's fucking Cheers, where they come to the bar to have a $2, PBR and just hang out and chill. And it's like, dude, I'm breaking my body upside down naked in heels like 20 feet away. Get the fuck out of here. Oh, wait, you can't. Most people in here are doing the same thing. So that's one of the things where it's become a lot more casual, which can be cool if you want to engage more casually. But I would rather someone have a lot of like shame. I'd rather honestly someone be rude to me and spend a bunch of money than to come in and be like, no, we're all friends and I'm not going to tip you. So that's an interesting downside. And it also takes up a lot of time. Like, I'll be, when I'm in a relationship or dating or having friends, which is most of the time, I could be in the middle of, breakfast or something or whatever. And I'm like, oh shit, I have to take a picture of myself, or I'm outside and I should capture this real quick because it's good for promo later. Or I feel cute right now, so let me just like record something for a minute because I might need this in a few days and, whatever. So it can be really disruptive when you're like, I didn't sign up to be a content creator. Like an entertainer is not the same as a content creator. And now I have to do both and an editor. And so not to sound ungrateful, but it's just, and then you have people that are like, well, send me a teaser, send me a freebie. It's like, bro, what about the 10 videos I post every other day for years? I have posted something online almost every single day of my life, like except for maybe 2 or 3 when I had a baby or no signal, almost every single day for 20 years. I don't want to be famous. I've said this over and again. I don't want to be famous. I want to be successful. But in order to let people know I exist, I have to showcase my wares. And now you just have to do it on such a grand scale for some of these other reasons. So it can be a lot. Thanks for asking.
So I think the thing that gets interesting about it, given and why I wanted you to explain like the diverse nature of you professionally, personally, and everything, because I feel like I get kind of jealous at times where like and perception is crazy doing a podcast because it's like we're all fighting for like the perception like someone else is doing really well. And then you might be like, well, what does that look like? Does it mean you're actually making money or that you have listeners or what is it?
Mm-hmm.
And, I often joke with a lot of people who do this where it's like we're all pitted against each other for no fucking reason. And ironically, it reminds me of, some of the stupid fights I'd see the dancers having at the club where you're like, why are you fighting? Like, you're essentially like, you two aren't the enemy. It's the fucking people not spending money and kind of the shitty management that's pitting you against each other. So when I think about all of those kind of things, I often wonder, do you feel because of how much you've had to be online to promote yourself, to make money at a club, to promote the various, I almost said things to be aware of, projects and so forth, and your writing and everything, do you feel like you are better suited to maybe like as a writer, like that you get more eyes on your stuff than somebody else because you have this ancillary avenue that people know you for? Or is it equally just as taxing where you're like, I don't fucking want anyone to like know 90% of this shit, but I have to because the thing I'm passionate about drives these other things, drive that thing and allow me to do those things and allow the eyes and ears and the opportunities I get to do it. Like, do you ever kind of get conflicted with it?
Yes. And again, like I only know my own experience, but sometimes I really wish that the only people who heard the podcast would never come into the club because I don't necessarily want to, nor do I have space for maybe something that someone might want to, talk about on the podcast in the club. And so that might be, maybe they want to talk about the human trafficking episode while we're in the club. So I can do that, but now I'm kind of doing like a little bit more than I counted on doing. But it can also be such a blessing because in terms of measuring success that you mentioned earlier, I wish that I made more money and had more of a reach. That would feel very satisfying to me. But when people tell me that the podcasts that I've done, whether it's something I said or someone I had on, changed their life, helped their life, improve their relationships, let them heal from trauma, pick up healthier habits, have better sex, like that's definitely a huge measurement of success. And I'm also greeted with that kind of feedback all the time, which feels like a gift and feels very touching. But yes, it can also be emotionally heavy. And I use this other example sometimes, like sometimes in the dressing room at the club or maybe out on the floor, maybe I just want to eat my sandwich or sit down and I'm not ready to hear someone tell me about every single time they've been sexually assaulted in their life, because they heard it on podcasts. They want to talk about it now. So it can feel like a great blessing and responsibility to have made myself so approachable to strangers. I really feel like I have a very intelligent, well-meaning, empathetic audience overall. I think that's one of the things that people who are drawn to me, they want to be affirmed. They want to feel better. They want to make other people feel better. They want to understand things. So that's something I definitely wake up with all the time. And I do get recognized quite a bit too, which can be startling to the people that are with me. If you're on a hike or eating food or in the movie theater. This was last Thursday, and it was a amateur film festival. It was the Hump Film Festival event. I went to the autumn showing in Portland, and there was a person in my row with their partner that said, "Hey, I love your work. Like, so grateful to have you in community." And like, that really touched me. We had a hug. I was glowing about it. The person I was with was like, "Wow." And I'm like, yeah. Now, what I think of all the people who recognize me who don't like me.
Yeah.
So I think about that, and I do things, for my safety, which is also time, energy, and money and resources that other people don't necessarily want to cope with. So it's a lot of different like moving parts that I don't think maybe a lot of people would have the energy nor the desire to navigate.
I'm going to say this and then follow it up with a question, but I think it's a good point to kind of point out, because something I think you do really well on your show is at times just dropping like little things you've learned in therapy. There was something, as you were just kind of saying, like sometimes it's real heavy when people kind of come to you and just kind of drop stuff on you. And I have a lot of that happening. And actually the reason I started going to therapy, and I always feel kind of bad that potentially if the person hears like, you're the reason I went to therapy, because not because of what you did or what you said, but because I realized I needed to go because of how I just shifted into, I have to do a podcast, and I went to customer service mode and just shut off I was literally crying for 20 minutes and then just turned it on. But I remember telling my therapist, I was like, I kind of get tired of people coming to me with like the heaviest shit that they have and then dumping it off on me. Like, okay, well, you're going to kill yourself. Okay. I have to walk you off the ledge. I have to do these things. And I remember this thing that my therapist said, and it was just kind of so freeing, but it just kind of shows you how sometimes we're up our own ass. But she just goes, "Why do you think you were the first?" And I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "Why do you think you're the first and or only person that person reached out to or said this thing to?" And I go, and I just kind of had to take it aback for a minute. It was just like, fuck, I'm such an egotistical, self-centered person that I just assume that I'm well, why wouldn't anyone come to me with their deepest, darkest problems?
Only one.
Yeah. And that
That's
just
an interesting
completely
redirect.
shifted my perception on some of these things. I don't know if you've ever heard that. So it was a thing as you were saying that, because like I said, you are someone that advocates things you've learned either in therapy or through conversation, that I would want to offer that to you in case you hadn't.
I appreciate that. That's a good one. I also notice this sometimes if you ever work in a space where you're with your coworkers a lot, and like maybe you'll notice one of them's telling the same story about her family or what she's looking forward to, or her niece or whatever, but says it like 8 different times throughout the day to 8 different people. And you're like, oh, she already told me this. She just really, or he just really wants to be heard on this thing, or it's what's on their mind or whatever. So that's what that makes me think of. It's like, oh yeah, sometimes it's not about you at all, but they need to unload.
Yeah.
My therapist said I had to be careful of that with my own partners, where I feel like because I'm in relationship with someone that they like should have this space for me, because I'd be like, wow, this really fucked up thing happened today. I need to unload it. Oh, I feel better now because I've just like, she called it transference. She's like, that can be a very unkind thing to do. You're like, I'm not thinking about this anymore, but now you are thinking about, the horrible car accident or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think mindful, of both of those things, where someone could just be needing to be heard over and over and over again. Doesn't mean you're the only person who had space for it, but keeping those things in mind when you respond.
Yeah. Yeah. But the question I was going to ask is, like, it seems like you're very aware, so aware of all of these things. Either how mindful are you of making boundaries and making time and place for these different parts of your life for yourself and for others, or how do you find the balance if you found something that is working for you to do that?
Well, good old ADHD, I don't really I got screened a few years ago, and turns out definitely ADHD. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I kind of can't really help it. I'm good at noticing when I'm up, and that's when I might make a bunch of outlines, calendar for the next month, food prep. So then when I'm down, then I have less to do. Plus the food is already made. I use a lot of lists. I have like 3 or 4 different calendars. I know a lot of people who are smarter than me and have taught me coping mechanisms and tools. And then in terms of task switching, which can be really challenging for autistic people or ADHD people, I am really good with, I will set a timer for myself. I play little games with myself, like reward challenges kind of. So I'll set a timer like, God, I really, really don't want to make this outline, or I really don't want to take these pictures of my ass, but I know I have to do it and I'll feel way better. So I'm going to set a timer for 20 minutes. Let's see if I can finish it in this time. And either I do, yay, it's done, I feel good, or I'm not done with it, but I'm halfway through. Let's reset the timer. It goes off. I got the thing done. So like, just really honestly, like my mom was a teacher's aide, specifically for special needs kids. So she was really good with like flashcards, timers, visuals, stuff like that. And I think we're kind of remiss to think that we don't need cues and prompts like that as we continue to grow and function, especially if you're carrying a lot of stuff. So I haven't locked my keys out of the car or lost a debit card in like 15 years. I think we're doing okay. But I mean, quite honestly, I just have a lot of energy and a hard time saying no to projects, and then some tools like that.
Yeah, I was feeling that today. I literally did a 45-minute interview while walking my dog because I still needed to do that in the hour-ish before doing this, leading up to this. And I was like, and I only had 20 minutes to get home from work, shower, so I didn't look like a complete piece of shit for this. And I was like, oh, I got to stop biting off more than I can chew, and just like giving myself 10, 15 minutes before something. But then part of me is like, when you pull it off and you do it well, you're like, well, I feel alive. Like, why wouldn't you want to do that? And you're like, because it's not great to exist in that sense all the fucking time.
Yeah,
but
I feel like a golden god, but yeah, I don't want to fly by the seat of my pants all the time either. I think that's one of those things I really liked about some of the Brene Brown time management accountability stuff is like, just be honest with yourself. If you're like, I like to think I'm on time all the time, but I'm not, or it's a squeeze. Or for me, I notice when I'm rushing, I'm rushing the people around me, which can be really aggravating or feel hostile or downright abusive if you're getting upset at them.
Thankfully, I only do it to myself. So typically no one's around that has to deal with it. It's like, this is my free time. I'm just going to cram as much crap into it and give myself like whatever. But
only I can ruin my day.
Yeah, pretty much.
Thank you for asking. No, I do. Also, to be quite honest, I think that might be one of my toxic traits is I tend to relay my personal value or relate it based on like what I've accomplished. I have had partners tell me that I am a workaholic and that can be challenging for them. So, one of I wouldn't say it's a regret, but it is an awareness I have, is my deceased partner, Brian. I was working some of the most ever in my adult life when we were together leading up to COVID. And part of that was because I was trying to finish my school certification, like carry a podcast, raise a kid, like I wanted to build my star and my little empire or whatever. And then the other part was COVID, just to like keep the household alive. But I really wish that I had set aside or been more deliberate about making time where I was unplugged with that partner. So I try to do that going forward.
I think that's something I'm navigating right now personally, is trying to find, it sounds so fucking cliche. Like when you hit 40, you're just like, shit's got to change. But it's like, I had foot surgery about a year ago where I had to like look at a calendar and go, where can I take 3 to 4 months off to just lay in a bed essentially and just heal. And it was arguably one of the most depressing times, because the day I could get off my weight bearing thing and get into a boot was the day before my birthday, which is like this Saturday as when we're recording. So it's literally almost a full year to the day of that happening.
You're the 20th.
I'm the 20th.
Okay. I'm right before you. We got Virgos everywhere.
All right. Well, happy pre-birthday to you.
Same.
But it was a thing where like it really kind of taught me to kind of shut things that aren't important, kind of really evaluate like what I want moving forward. And that's kind of even happening like right now. Like there's a handful of jobs I'm applying for where I'm like, I'm not happy where I am and I want to be challenged. And interestingly, like I've reconnected with my grandmother in the last few months after my grandfather passed away, and talking to her about a job that I'm going into, hope maybe that's similar, but it's like, you've been doing it for 50 years, like at a time when women didn't work, and especially in insurance and so forth. So like, tell me about your experience, and like, what are some things I should maybe learn before I even get into this, and things like that. So it's been interesting to kind of just navigate things and kind of understanding like that when you want something, when you kind of need to kind of go into that full throttle mode, but also find like where I'm at now with a work-life balance, and when things need to change. Like even doing this show, I'm kind of adopting more of what you have been doing, which is a seasonal format. And I have to say, it has been so nice not to be stressed trying to get something out every single week, and all the stuff that you have to do to get out an episode, that it's like I can kind of enjoy this a little bit more, and it doesn't have to feel like, oh, I got to get something out just for the sake of getting something out, because what is that doing? It's just diluting the thing.
Totally. Well, I'm really glad to hear that. It does feel better, to have that kind of structure.
So
mid-season right now, and it feels good.
Something kind of speaking to your podcast, and actually something you just kind of brought up. I'm kind of terrible with names. I think it was in your episode J, J-A-E, I think.
Jay, yes. She survived the horribly abusive mother parents.
That was it.
Jay Tracy.
Yep. So in that episode, you were talking about dealing with your dad's failing health, and that you and others, and I wrote the quote down because I didn't want to misquote this. You said, "I want to be able to live with how I showed up that feels comfortable for me. I don't want to have any regrets that I could have been meaner or kinder or whatever. So really, people, I think you want to consider, what can you live with? What will feel good for you, like, to deal with all of that." And I've kind of come to this realization in the last few years that with the loss of my own friends and family and all that, that you kind of have seemed to be at a sense of relief. And I've always felt like it, kind of dealing with it the way you were talking about it, always felt like a selfish thing. Like, I'm still the bigger person, even in death. I showed up to funerals. I'm there for you, even, whatever. And I kind of carry this with me, this sort of sense of either regret or entitlement or whatever. And I feel like you've navigated it, or you're at least out the point where you can navigate it with grace. And I kind of wonder, is that something you've always been able to do, or is that something that you've had to really work on?
Let's see how I handle it when my dad actually dies, and if I handle it with grace, or if I, all my childhood resentments come out on social media. We'll find out.
Fair enough.
I think that I have noticed how when people die, and unique to our age group, we're older millennials. So our age group and younger, way more of our friends are dying by suicide than in our parents' generation. So this is not my opinion. This is, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. They watch this stuff. A lot of organizations do. And drastically, suicide has increased in the last 5 to 10 years, and then it's held steady. So mental health stuff. Yeah. Anyway, so I have had a unique experience. Also, I think I just know a shitload of people who have trauma backgrounds, because I tend to connect with people, but also a lot of people who work in the nightlife or just random weirdo gigs, are more likely to deal with weird job hours, lack of access to healthcare, mental health care. We tend to drink and smoke more. So I've just seen so many people I know die by accident, suicide, overdose, gun violence in the last specifically 5 to 10 years. And this looks like coworkers, that were bouncers or dancers or DJs. And what really has been interesting is to watch how people will behave after some people die. And for some folks, that looks like making it about themselves. So when my close partner died by suicide, I definitely saw so many behaviors that kind of surprised me. And that might look like a couple people claiming that they were very close when in fact they didn't spend time together. And Brian specifically told me he didn't like you at all and was pretty clear about that. A couple people accused me of actually shooting him myself, which I was like, damn, I knew you didn't like me, but that's a strong accusation. What really bothered me, I think, a lot is seeing people try to either make it more about themselves and how they're affected, which, like, legit, we all are affected by death. Or just acting like, I guess, like the person who died, like that they had a good connection. And it is okay for someone to die and for you to be like, yeah, we weren't friends, but that's a shame. Like, you don't have to, I'm speaking directly to some people in mind right now. You don't have to act like you guys were like in love or friends. Like, it doesn't matter. You don't need that kind of validation. So I think I try to be realistic about how I remember people that have died. And that could be like, maybe we were on the outs from speaking, or maybe I knew that person, thought I was annoying, and I can still, be sad about their death. Or maybe that person lied on me before, tried to get me fired. And, I'm not resentful of that anymore. But so I've just seen so many different things surprise me that I cannot emotionally attach to, because people are gonna people and they have so many reasons for acting how they do. But the best I can do is just get honest. And it's also okay to just like not have an opinion about something.
I think that's been, as I get older, something that's been kind of freeing. Instead of this thing where so many people, I think, are try to fit in because we literally have a wealth of knowledge or misinformation, whichever side of the fence you want to believe in. But it's interesting that I feel like everyone feels like they have to be involved in any and all conversations versus actually admitting that you don't know something, and maybe either having someone take the time to explain something to you if you want to learn. I've also tended to find, maybe conveniently for me, that a lot of times people be like, oh, you know this thing? And you're like, no. And they go, oh. And then they just don't talk
and
to
they
you
don't either. Yeah.
And then you're like, all right, cool. I don't have to
I
don't have to get sucked into this thing that I probably don't care about.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because, like, and I think something that I love about what I've been doing on this show over the last basically since I went to therapy, and something that I love about your show is sort of these moments where you articulate these like epiphany moments. And I had one, ironically, at my grandfather's funeral recently, where I had to go back home, and I wanted, presumably my last time going back where I grew up from, to be this magical thing because it's the last time I'm going, and none of it worked the way I wanted it to. Like, I wanted to go to the beach and put my feet in the water one more time to be reconnected and grounding and all that. It rained and I couldn't go to the beach. I was near it. I could see it, but I just couldn't go do it. Going to the funeral and having to be a pallbearer and dealing with that and like the goodbyes and family I haven't seen in 20 years. And then being reminded as I'm sort of trying to navigate like weird familial relationships that aren't for me, because I grew up away from all of them. But then unlocking in real time, oh fuck, this is where all my imposter syndrome shit started because of all of you, and you're still doing it to me. And it was just like, and part of me really wanted to be like, I'm an adult now and I don't fucking know you anymore, so I can just say what I want. And then I look over at my mom and I go, but she has to still be here. So I would really like to. But it's weird to be in that moment and to be able to unlock and feel these things. And so like I said, I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit and just kind of see, like, have you always had that grace? Because it's still in me at times where I feel like I have to take up for the little kid who couldn't and didn't. But then something I also wanted to ask you about, because as I sit here now and, I believe you're still in the place where Brian, passed away. I hold on to these things that are kind of hard at times. And I don't know that I've ever talked to anyone that maybe feels this sense of heaviness just by existing where you live, where you have the daily reminders because you live in the house and you're still, I don't want to call them triggers necessarily, but it's like, I know for me, like in another room, I could be like, oh, TJ, when you fucking nailed that stupid painting into the wall and you put a hole in it and you never fixed it and it's still there and I haven't fixed it because I just can't bring myself to do it. And those little reminders where it's like, it's sad and I don't know if I'm not allowing myself to move on or if I am, because I want those memories and I don't want them to go away. Like, you're one of the few people that I can kind of ask how your experience with that has been, if you don't mind me asking.
Oh yeah, no, totally. I always, this is a very sinister joke. At this point, so I do have other romantic partners and close friends that grapple with suicidality, like very actively. And the joke is, well, please don't do it at my house because I don't want it to be a crime scene here again. There is a very large awareness amongst a lot of our close friends, me and Brian's, and like I still interact with a lot of them, that he died at my house, and where he died at the house. And we have a little, we have some painted memorial, like where he did in the driveway. And then I know where his hat is buried in the yard. And when I'm, so standing in the kitchen, sometimes eating, I'm like, here's where I was standing eating when I heard the gunshot. So definitely an awareness. And I remember my mother asking me if I was going to move out of the house shortly after it happened. And it's funny because the idea had kind of occurred to me, but then I also thought like the amount of effort and work to do so greatly outweighs the like momentary sadness or weird feelings. So it's not so bad that like I need to leave. And I guess, how long has it been since you lost TJ?
So here's the weird thing. I moved into this house with my two friends, TJ and DJ. They had both passed. I then, when one of them moved out, replaced them with a coworker of mine who also passed away. So I've had 3 people in this house that lived here pass away.
Okay, well, no wonder you kind of feel weird about it. Is it the house? Is it cursing them?
I don't know. Because it all like it happened years and years after everyone moved out. But it's interesting because like I kind of joked in one capacity because like my wife and I bought the house like a couple years ago. I've lived in it for almost 15 years.
Okay, but you just bought it recently.
And it was interesting because like, and I realized it's such a weird thing that most people don't live in a house that long that they don't own. So it's like, as soon as we bought it, I was like, fuck, let's get rid of this. Let's pull up like all the things I'd always wanted to do because I lived here. And it's like, that's not a normal thing to just rush into changing everything because you've had all that time to be like, this has always annoyed me and I need to get rid of it. But the thing that was interesting when kind of purging a lot of things from the house, like I remember tearing down the bar that someone that lived here before me had built, a shitty, I thought it was a shitty bar. It actually was built pretty well. But I started having like a little breakdown like as I was tearing it down because I remember we got the keys to the place, TJ and I, we got a couple of cases of beer to go from a bar nearby, and we came into the house before we were supposed to and sat in the basement and talked about all the things we were going to do. And as I'm tearing this bar apart, I was like, I'm getting rid of a piece of us. And it felt very weird. And it was weird because I didn't think I'd have that attachment to certain things. So to me, and like I said, maybe it's because there's more people, but when I go through different rooms, I think of different things. And, you know, I always find humor, and I think you do as well, in some of these things. Like I joked, you know, after everyone's gone, I was like, well, I guess I won Roommate Survivor.
So you're still standing.
So there's that. I mean, like I had to put my dog down on New Year's Day 2020. I fucking hated that in the moment. I can now joke that she knew that all the shit was about to come because they have a sixth sense. So she's like, I'm out. And it's a thing. And it's like, there are things that, and this is the weird thing about social media and following somebody through different avenues, but through following you, it's like, I feel like in times you're slightly behind me with things, but I feel like you handle it in such a way, maybe because you're a lot more vocal about it through the podcast and through other things, that it feels like you're just so much ahead of what's taking me years to process it and kind of get to. And maybe that's not it. Maybe I'm projecting from what I see, but I just wonder, as someone who's gone through a lot of these things and I know what it has done to me and how I want to, better's not the word, but I want people to, I guess maybe that's the thing, is I feel like when I hear you talk about the things with Brian, the things when you got, you know, when your dog
put the dog down.
Yeah, that it's like, these are the things of getting older that we just don't talk about, how to navigate them, how, like, that it's okay to feel these things and that you're not alone in it. And I think that's the thing, at least when I was thinking about it today, and I knew I was going to talk to you, that it's like, how have you navigated it? Because hopefully when someone listens to this through our own experiences between you and I hope that either or all of it someone's able to take something and it's going to help them navigate some of these things as well, because I think you handle it very well. And I want to be able to have that same way of handling things, because I feel like it's more adult than maybe how I want to handle it in the moment.
All I can say is my therapist told me, and she's seen me for like 12 or 13 years at this point. She said that I respond to things differently than a lot of people, and it surprises her consistently. So I don't know. 2 days after Brian died by suicide, I remember I was like halfway through a grief book and I was going to Target to get totes to store his stuff. And it wasn't because I was trying to move on and forget him, but I was like, if I stay still, I'm going to struggle or die. So I need to keep going. And that's that, like, only I can really save my life through a series of choices. So I think trying to consistently move forward has always been my thing. And some people will sometimes see that as insensitive, but I don't want to stay stuck. I also think this is the part where I'm lucky that I know people that are smarter than me. So like I was able to have a session with a death doula. And I had, grief, online support, not webinars, but like meetings that I went to. I got to interview Megan Devine about grief and sexuality, and she normalized a lot of things for me. That's a really good episode. That's on They Talk Sex podcast, the grief and sexuality episode. I think it's season 1 with Megan Devine. So I think I just had a lot of framing and support. And I also remember reading in a grief book that many people report after losing someone significant that it takes them 2 to 5 years to feel a semblance of normalcy. And someone like me who measures their success in productivity, I remember throwing the book down by the side of the tub and I was like, Brian, this fucks up my life plan. Like, you killing yourself fucked up my life plan. Like, I don't have 2 to 5 years to be normal. God damn it. So it's just having information and then weird personality quirks and a series of choices. But like, it's okay to cry about someone you lost, 2, 10, 30 years ago. I don't want to be the person that gets choked up and has a hard time like moving on every time I think about my dead dog or partner. Yeah. I don't want to say. So it was really important to me to actively be in the pain and figure out how to process it. For the bar thing, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can talk to yourself about. He might be really happy that you guys got to use it for the fun time, but then you said, it was kind of a shitty bar. You didn't need it. So like, you're going to do something better with it anyway.
Well, I think there just becomes this thing of sort of like a purging of sorts of like, I think we all do it, but I think especially like I said, after a while, you're just like, these things don't, I'm real big on return of investment right now. Okay. So like a lot of things, it's like, if it's not adding value, like I just was cleaning out my closet and there were so many things. My wife was like, you're getting rid of that. You're getting rid of that. I go, before I even came in here, I said to myself, if I haven't worn it in 6 months, I'm getting rid of it. Like I clearly it has no attachment to me. It's not my new favorite shirt. It's not this. I need to separate feelings from things and let it go to somebody else. And then that way the magic or whatever can bring happiness to somebody else or can bring something to somebody else. And I think another big thing I've been thinking about a lot more, and I was just talking about it with my tattoo artist friend last night when I was doing a house project, but and I wonder if you deal with this as well, that you're able to identify the things that you struggle with dealing with yourself and others, and you kind of keep those people around because you're like, well, let me figure out your shit and help you, because then maybe by proximity I'll kind of it'll give me the permission to do the same thing for myself. Do you tend to do that?
Maybe. I don't know. I tend to date fixers and I need to stop doing that.
I would have, again, projecting, I would have assumed you would be the fixer.
I'm usually the one, that's trying to fix or like lend value or be like, let me help you optimize your life. But consistently, romantic partners will tell me that they thought that I was more emotionally stable. So there's, maybe behind the curtain, like I'm not always so with it or together. And I do definitely like late at night and I start having like, oh, I'm having a panic attack, not because of anything that's going on, but because of things that have happened before. So usually I can know what is happening, but I am so incredibly like delicate and vulnerable in these little moments that it's like time to lay the blanket on me or whatever. But that does surprise people. They're like, "Oh, you're so tough," but like, damn, you are baby sometimes. Yeah. Everybody baby sometimes. I'm like, now's my time to be baby. I got 1 hour.
Turn on your timer.
Yeah, it's 1 hour to be sad. Let's get to it.
To not end this on such a somber note, although I really appreciate your willingness to kind of dive into the realness of things that you and I have both experienced.
Mm-hmm.
As I kind of have been saying throughout, I consider you to be a very well-read and articulate person, which is obviously what draws me to a lot of your content. And it's very obvious you come from a place of curiosity, either through circumstances or just genuine curiosity. I wonder, though, as an educator, how hard do you find it to find, and I'm going to use air quotes here, correct information, as well as staying current with things that, when it just seems like I was alluding to earlier, we have such a wealth of misinformation. Does that factor into a lot of your curiosity and your I want to say crusade, but that sounds so...
The mission.
Yeah. To crusade against that, essentially. Does that factor into it, or is it just trying to help people try to not like basically be steered in the wrong way with different narratives and so forth that can come from a lot of what you discuss on your podcast and just in general in your writings?
I have to cite my sources like over and again. And so that looks like 3 to 5 sources, before I consider something like valuable. That's part of the reason I don't want to do a live show, is because if I don't know something, I want to be able to look it up, edit that time gap, so the audience actually learns something. That's one of the things I hated about, like I loved listening to radio growing up, but talk radio and a lot of podcasts just drive me bonkers because people are hemming and hawing and guffawing about stuff that you could just find out instead of being like, I wonder. So it's usually like, what's the objective? Like, nobody's really objective. Okay. But like, who is the source? Do they have sponsors? Is this cross-referenced anywhere else? Is there an agenda? And then also sometimes to acknowledge when I am confronted with information that I don't like or I disagree with, unfortunately, that's what it is. So I guess acknowledging or recognizing my own biases, or also just getting curious about why things are, a statistic or data doesn't necessarily or really ever explain something entirely. It's just an indication of a measurement of some things. So like a really quick example I'll give is when COVID shutdowns happened, and locally, at least in Oregon, they were saying that the amount of child abuse reports to various, agencies had drastically dropped almost to zero. That didn't mean people weren't abusing their kids. It means that kids weren't in school. They couldn't report
it. Yep.
Exactly. So stuff like that. If you see clickbait, if you see something outrageous that seems really outrageous, it might be worth investigating why. And then also, God, AI and like just the stuff that you can fake nowadays makes it even scarier and harder So I guess I just try to verify my sources like as objectively and patiently as possible.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I, again, kind of have learned in talking and doing something like this is a lot of times I'll say, I read something, didn't have time to either cross-reference it to see if it's all valid or if a part of it is, or if it's been misquoted or whatever. So take what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. However, the thing I'm going to ask or the launching off point, still valid because it got me there. But I think a lot of people don't view information as something that, in light of literally what happened in the last week, where people are spreading misinformation and a ton of other things, that it's like, step back, don't be so reactionary to having to be quote unquote first or whatever, and allow more facts and information and kind of use your own brain to make informed decisions.
Yeah. I had to look up what a groyper was. I'd never heard that before. And I thought I was...
What is it?
So I might be mispronouncing it. GROYPER. So it is a specific faction of alt-right, very online, mostly men who were mad that Charlie Kirk wasn't hateful enough. They tend to be, they're Nick Fuentes fans. Nick Fuentes is another figurehead podcaster, hateful person. He's the one who said last year, 2024, about women and reproductive rights, your body, our choice.
Okay.
It's very, very unlikable. Yeah. So there is reason to believe that people in the alt-right targeted Charlie Kirk because he was disruptive to their end goals. So either way, we know the shooter is a white male who, we know the person who was reported for maybe doing the shooting has a law enforcement Mormon parent background. We don't know so many things, but right, exactly. Even how I just corrected myself, like we don't even know what we know. And then can we even believe what the truth is? Because the media has its agendas too.
Yeah, my wife's rewatching Scandal right now. She doesn't understand. She understands. I should retract that. She understands what procedurals are, but only because in recent years I've told her, like, you like procedurals, and she goes, "What's that?" And I go, like, you like Law and Order SVU. You like these shows that basically do the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you know the end result is going to be wrapped up in an hour or a half hour. Like, you know that to be true. But she's rewatching Scandal right now, and she's just like, "Oh, it's really weird. Like, an election was rigged. How weird?" And I go, not weird. I watched it kind of casually with you the first run, and I was like, there was something that happens in that show where you're like, do you think that happens? I go, both sides working together to fuck us as the people and that we don't know, and they're going to spin it for something else? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
And I go, why wouldn't they?
Yeah, follow the money.
So, sure.
All the time. Yeah,
so,
definitely
a thing, though. I've been really, really trying to figure out how to spin your last question that you usually ask people.
Ooh, do you have any sex tips for our audience?
Well, I had a Blasco who's back in Rob Zombie's band, but some people might know him more for like working with like Liquid Death and kind of being more of a manager of stuff. And he did a show, short-lived, where he basically always is like, what are the I forget what the question is now, but I turned it on him. And it was just a thing to kind of show, like, I listened to your show to have you on this thing for you to promote it.
Great.
But I couldn't figure out a different way to turn that question on its head, or in like an interesting, insightful way. So the only thing that I've kind of come up with, and it still seems kind of lame, but I'm just going to ask it anyway, is given the diverse nature of your life experiences, dealing with all kinds of different people, all different ages, what is one universal truth you have come to learn?
I should pay more attention to what people are telling me and share less myself, quite honestly. Because one of the things I tend to give away in my power is talking too much, being too vulnerable, over-explaining myself, anxiety stuff. And I feel like I learned more when I shut the fuck up. So in terms of with clients, with dating, with parenting, it is better if I listen more to the other person and think harder about how I respond. I would be a lot more successful, honestly, if I was more patient.
I hate admitting this because I don't always like being an advocate for this, but for me, it works. So grain of salt with this piece of information. I've really fallen in love with psychedelics instead of drinking. And then in the process at this point of not looking for work, I can't do a lot of those things because it's like, all right, the drinking is the acceptable one and I hate it. And even on psychedelics, drinking became this thing where I was like, oh, this thing I don't even want to carry it with. It's such a hassle to pick up this drink I didn't even want and I didn't ask for. And I just want to have this good time doing whatever on acid or on, mushrooms and so forth. But the amount of times on those that I have that same thought where I'm like, I'm just happy being here and listening and interjecting very sporadically. But when I do, it's more poignant, it's more powerful. And I should really lean into that. And I just don't, but I'm trying. And I was reminded of that not even a week ago when I was on a little dose of mushrooms around a fire with some friends.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that would be my power play. That's something I'm actively trying to do. If it's New Year's Eve and I'm making a resolution, it's to talk less and listen more. But I fucking love talking. So
same. Where can everyone find you or anything you would like to plug?
Yeah. So look me up My website is stripperwriter.com. That's kind of a hub where you can see some of the things I've done and how to find me performing or how to book me for entertainment. You can find my erotica, my porn there. You can find me on Instagram at the same handle, Stripper Writer. I'm pretty busy on there. Otherwise, the podcast is They Talk Sex Podcast and theytalksex.com.
Thank you so much for taking the time and chatting today. And honestly, just feels like kind of a milestone 9 years into like have someone who I value their show for what it has been and what it does, not only for me, but others, as you said. So thank you so much for actually taking the email and coming on a show maybe that didn't seem like it maybe made sense for you to come on.
I had a great time. Happy birthday to us both. And thank you for all your kind words of support. It's really motivating.
Absolutely.